All right. Episode 4, Conversations with a Statistician. Christian Kaufman.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Oh, I'm excited, man.
I don't
Let's see
know.
what unfolds.
Yeah. I guess we can just keep going with the art conversation. Yeah, so you said like you really only kind of like check out at least that version of art when you're with your brother and his wife, maybe you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say like I was, through high school, middle school, even now, I would consider myself more of a musician and not
Do you consider
necessarily
that a part
gifted.
of art?
I do.
Interesting.
It's just I don't. For me, it never overlapped much. Like my curiosity in music never really expressed itself in any painting or sculpture or anything like that. It wasn't until like I read a book. I think I was telling you about this before. I think it's like the dawn of the golden age or something like this, where it was a Nobel laureate neuroscientist who also had an appreciation for art. And he was tracing the co-evolution of the modernist art form with developments in neuroscience in like the turn of 1900 in
sweet.
Austria. And it took place in these kind of cafes. I think this is the idea of like this cafe scientifique kind of tries to, follow suit of.
Oh.
But it was people like just very influential philosophers could also meet with neuroscientists, could meet with artists.
Was this like
They're all in direct conversation.
How recent is this neuroscientist?
The one he would be very the one who wrote the book.
Yeah.
I think he released a book in maybe 2000 or something.
Oh, so
like that.
pretty recent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he like mention like did Simone de Beauvoir or Jean-Paul Sartre? Were they?
No.
Okay, because their big thing is like they would go to cafes in Paris.
Yeah.
And there's like a famous cafe they would go to, and so I was curious if that was like.
And I mean, I think that culture actually totally existed. He was specifically looking in Austria. And
got it.
Basically, I think probably exclusively Vienna.
Okay.
So I think it probably took place. That's just the way the culture back then played out. That's how people conversed. That's how interdisciplinary forms were made.
Sure.
In that informal setting.
Huh.
Which I wouldn't be surprised if that same thing happened in Paris at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Could you ever buy an argument where you could maybe see music as not art?
No, I would never. I don't think that would make
What
much
about
sense.
like parts of music that aren't art? Could you
Sure.
like a Venn diagram sense?
No, I just don't think so. But I can say things are artful and less artful. Certainly.
Sure.
It's because there's a spectrum to it, right?
What makes
there's
something
a
more
lazy-
artful or go
Well, I
ahead.
think art is a form of expression.
Okay.
So then by that metric, which is just one aspect of it, well, no, I think it is probably the entire aspect of it, is how you express yourself.
Interesting.
And to that degree, which you express yourself, makes it more artful or less artful.
So
But that comes to subjectivity, because you might think you're expressing yourself well and it's not received at all, right? So one person might think it's artful and another wouldn't, but yeah.
So you're saying there's like a strict dependence on both how you're expressing yourself and like someone receiving your expression?
In order to consider it art?
Yeah.
Or
more
certainly.
artful.
Well, I think the what would you call it? Like it's the incongruence between those two, the way you put it out and the way it's received, I guess would just lead to how someone perceives it on either end. But I would say you could measure, call something artful as the maximum of those two. I would kind of give like the conservative estimate, where I would say, if they think it's artful, if they think it's artful, it's artful. And if neither do, which certainly happens a lot of times now, I think, with like AI generated boring stuff where the creator isn't very invested, and then the receiver also is kind of like meh.
Sure.
I would call that on the very low end of the
So they can be independent of each other in terms of something determining how how much art there is. How
within
artful.
a piece.
That's interesting. So it's like how artful something is. So it's like, yeah, I'm almost trying to like wrap my head around that.
Don't think too much, because I haven't thought on it too much. So.
Well, it's fun though. Like this is why I'm excited, man. This is why I'm excited to hear. Is like, and this is part of the point of my podcast, is like going down rabbit holes like
A
this.
fresh one that I've never thought about
Well,
before.
yeah,
So.
and it's just fun, man. Like this is fun to me.
Mhm.
I guess
Oh,
I hope
it is.
okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I
As long
hope
as you're
it's
not hoping it for it to be
no,
useful.
no, and
or
that's
enlightening.
part of the point. Is like I don't know, like yeah, I'm not expecting to have like the expert of art or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's just fun, like to take someone who's already like very well, kind of studied or practiced in one area, but then apply kind of like their mind to a different area and see what they think, and also just have fun. But I want to go back to that more artful, less artful. Can you like perceive of like a limit to how artful something is?
I would say because like from a mathematics, I think so. Yes. Yeah. Mathematically speaking, no, but I think there are limits to the human.
Expression?
Just because we're limited in every sense of the word in every way. So that's got to lend itself to a limit of expression. Other than that, how that manifests, I could not say.
I was just gonna ask,
no.
what could you try to explain what you think the limit is? Is that when both the recipient and the expressionist, the person who's creating the art, feel like kind of at their peaks, I guess? However, will you try to even?
Well, I don't know.
define
Like,
that?
does it take every ounce of your life force to express it, or something like that? Like something that comes to mind is I don't know. Like for some, when you said that, the first thing I thought of was the Rage Against the Machine cover art with with the Buddhist monk lighting himself on fire.
Oh yeah, self-immolation.
Protest. Yes, yeah. And I'm like, they probably didn't consider that form of protest as art form now, but it's on an album now.
Yeah.
That's kind of qualifies as art in some sense, and it's like, is that the foremost? Like, it's pretty potent, and I mean, maybe it's only art since someone captured it on film and put on a cover art, but does that define one of the limits? And so that's the other thing. It's like there's probably many limits. It's such a multivariable. I mean, there's just there's so many dimensions to art and the way you can express yourself, and each one of those dimensions and each of their interactions would have to have their own limits. By just kind of like, I'm thinking from like a functional mathematical framework, because otherwise I don't have much to operate off.
Can you I'm going to ask this question and just take it as is. Do you think there's a way in which we could break through those limits?
Well, I think we can. I guess breakthrough is kind of an odd way to frame it. Maybe like push them further along, and I think I think we've already done that in many ways. Like more efficient tools, for instance, the more availability of the materials to actually express yourselves. Like if you think about like paints and stuff, they weren't available to everyone until a certain point.
Or even like this podcast
became more widely available.
Like rewind the clock 50, 60, 70 years. Like if I tried to do this in my house, like I'm
cost so much.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
And now it's totally normalized, where it's like not only is it a low monetary cost, but it's also kind of like you have a low social cost, where it's like back in the day, if you did this in your own basement or something, people would probably think you're a loony.
Yeah. 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 So going back to what we were talking about originally with music and art. So do you believe, in a Venn diagram sense, all of music is encompassed within art?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
You could never be convinced that maybe some of music is not encompassed in art.
I would say, it's all encompassed by art. It's just the degree to which you call it artful.
Why do you think it's all encompassed within art?
Because music is meant to express something or communicate, or whether it's a theme song, kind of just like primes your brain to think of, oh, this is my favorite superhero show because that song came on. That's expressing something to you. So even if you think it's this is a really basic song and kind of contrived, or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Even if it's AI generated.
So by that definition, whenever you're expressing yourself, it's always art.
I think you could definitely.
Interesting.
Make that argument. Yeah.
Okay.
The art of communication.
Okay.
Like even talking, speaking, orating.
I don't want to say I disagree, because like I don't feel like I have my opinions well thought through enough, but I don't want to just immediately jump to you to say all music is art. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of my kind of like built-in skepticism from just like taking philosophy classes and stuff, of just like not always buying into something right away. Not because I don't think it's, or I'm not implying that it's not true. It's just,
Mhm.
I don't know. There's something in me that's like, Sometimes I hold on to this idea like literature. It's like I don't want to necessarily say like all literature is art.
Mhm.
And I kind of want to extend that to other areas too, because I don't know if this is a correct way to think about it. But sometimes I feel like to just say like all music is art or like something like that, like all literature is art. It's like, it feels like it's limiting. And maybe that's not true. And I don't know why I
Hmm.
feel that way, but maybe it's like a concern of mine is that like we're almost limiting it to like, yeah. And I feel like, I don't know. And like I said, that could be totally wrong. But if
Mhm.
it is true, then I don't want people to feel like music is limited,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's like crude logic.
No, I get you,
But
and I think it would also like in order to actually get on this rabbit hole, probably have to agree on what like the definition of art is, which we haven't established, and
well, you
I
said
think
it's
we have a very different. I don't. Yeah, I kind of came to some definition,
sure.
and you didn't really state yours, so yours might be different, and that
Yeah.
probably would kind of naturally alleviate the
Yeah.
incongruity there.
Right. Right. Um, yeah. Okay. So going back to well, we can talk a little bit more about your background, and then maybe I think it'd be fun to mix in back going to like your perception and like your experiences with art and music. I think that'd be really fun.
Okay, yeah.
So you obviously grew up in Duluth. Wait, no, were you born in California?
I was born in Duluth. It was
You're,
my brothers are Cali.
that's what it
Well,
was.
one of my brothers. My family was here, there, and then back. So
Okay, so
yeah.
basically born in Duluth. Grew
Yeah,
up at
I'm
Duluth.
just a Minnesotan.
Yeah, went to high school here. Went off to college at Yale.
Hmm.
Um, and then went to grad school back here in Duluth for your master's in
Chemistry.
chemistry.
Yeah.
Okay, kind of more of like a physical chemistry realm.
Yep.
And then you went, and now you're in your PhD for statistics.
Biostatistics.
Biostatistics.
Yeah.
So you were saying that your exposure to kind of like the version of art where it's pottery, paintings. That's more just kind of going through galleries with other people.
No, I would say it's the impetus to go.
Okay.
Is like on other suggestions.
Okay. How come you?
But I definitely feel confident leading myself through.
Yeah, yeah.
Once
yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah, and I don't mean to imply that you don't feel confident.
Yeah.
How come that stuff maybe didn't appeal to you as much? Kind of being a musician and believing that all of music is encompassed with art. How come maybe seeking that out more, being around that more?
Hmm.
How come?
I think it's just familiarity.
Okay.
Whether I'd thought about it and seen these things and given it an opportunity to like come to some understanding with them, which earlier on in my life I just didn't. And I don't say that as like regret in any way.
Yeah.
There's just only so many things you can engage with.
Right.
So at that point in my time, I hadn't really looked at. I mean, and really when I say like I wouldn't have gone to like a modernist display or anything like that, like I still found beauty in like landscape art, things that are maybe more, I would say, more accessible to someone who hasn't like explicitly sought it out, because it's more, the shape and form is more familiar because like you encounter it every day, right? So like I could engage with that, no problem.
When you say landscape art, do you mean like actual like viewing like just outside beauty, like you're like overlooking Lake Superior or like a cliffside or something, or do you mean a painting of a landscape?
A painting, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, like a photorealistic painting of a field or
Sure.
whatever that. Like that was super easy. Like I could always kind of vibe with that because it was, like I said, similar to what I see in my everyday life.
Sure.
But like when it came to more expressionist forms, I kind of just kind of had that naive thought where, you kind of, I can't remember like the artist who made it, but they put like a red line across a black background or something. And then that's like a very, very important piece. And you kind of tell yourself, you kind of scoff, you're like, huh, I could do that. Like I'm a eighth grader. I could make that very easy. And you just never even, that's the amount of thought I gave it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really until I read this one book and I came to realize like how you can start to analyze these pieces. Not that I'm an expert,
Yeah.
but you can kind of, given the context of that time, a little bit of knowledge about the artist, not like crazy, because like I said, I'm not an expert. You can really tease out like the emotions a lot more easily with these expressionist pieces, and that's when I started to have a more of appreciation for those.
Sure. I just want to double check. Is that recording on your end? Is that?
Yep.
And that red light's
Yeah,
coming?
we're like 16 minutes in.
Really?
Oh, I mean, I think you started it early, maybe
You
to
mean
check the sound.
16?
16.
Oh, I thought you said
Oh, yeah.
60.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Yeah. Okay.
I gotta start speaking faster.
No. I just was like, oh wow. Time really did fly. Okay, so yeah, no, I had the initial kind of impression too. I'd say mine is like less maybe, I don't know if academic is the right way to call it for your experience, but like because like what drew me to art originally was actually I have a really good buddy of mine who would go off and travel, and he'd bring like an art piece home from his travels, and it was kind of like a way to commemorate what he had experienced. And so it just kind of like all of a sudden dawned on me, like watching him do that, where I was like, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I buy this cool unique piece that says something about maybe like the landscape or something, the culture while I was there? And then when I came home, from doing stuff like that, then I kind of started looking at more of the local artists. And like, I don't know how you feel about local art. Sometimes I have these feelings about, I can't remember if we talked about this, but sometimes I have these feelings about like you see something in Duluth local and you've been around it so many times, like Lake Superior, the shore. And so you see it so many times in different ways throughout the seasons. And sometimes it seems like an artist, and maybe this is like impressionism by definition, like the artist captures like those feelings in a way that maybe is like really hard to articulate. You don't have the means to articulate it yet. And so you see an artist capture it, and then, they like represent it in a painting. And so I think that's what really started to speak to me about local art and like landscape art, was that they would do that. And so, especially like summer in Duluth, like I think we've talked about this, like summer in Duluth is my favorite because, I think partly because it's just more rare, it's like a scarcity, it feels like, with the warm, beautiful days and the beautiful freshwater ocean right there in Park Point. And so like when I see things that capture that in my feelings in a way, at least how it feels like it captures my feelings in a way that's hard for me to articulate, so that's what I think really started drawing me to local art. But then like the more and more I got exposed to it and just kind of viewing it, like I just feel like I did gain an appreciation for abstract art. And maybe that gets into like color theory and how colors are placed with each other in just a very pure sense, and not so much trying to represent like a specific place in reality, but feelings. And have you heard of like Mark Rothko? I think that's his name. And how like people go up to his paintings and all of a sudden just start weeping.
Oh, well, I guess no, I never heard of that.
Okay, yeah, like I think he's a really big, like he's really well known for that. Is like he's got these like dichromatic paintings, like big paintings. Sometimes it's like multiple colors, but it's like 2 or 3 colors.
I think this is probably the same art form that I was referencing before when I would scoff at.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and like
where it's like a square.
Yeah, it's like one big painting,
Yeah.
and then there's like 2 colors.
Yeah.
And like I even remember Professor from Scholastica talking about this, and like she was like, I just thought it was always so dumb, and she's like, I didn't understand it, and then she like saw one day, and apparently she started just crying. So just like kind of almost like did a total 180. And I've seen them, and I've like tried to just like be a blank slate and just let it happen, and nothing ever really happened. But I always was curious too if like the intention of him was to do that. And I remember reading a description of one, and it was his intention. But anyways, it's cool to hear, like someone who, especially at one point was very into music, into, having his own band or being a part of a band, and hearing your thoughts on that kind of stuff. Because like, in some ways it's like, it's maybe not accurate to say like you're an expert musician, but you have a level of competency with musician where I think it kind of gives you this unique perspective on like other forms of art, and vice versa when you kind of talk to people.
Oh, certainly. And like those feelings that you have, like you can get those similar things when you're playing with a group or listening to a group.
Sure.
And I think in a sort of like a muscular fashion where it's like you work out that muscle, so then it'll be easier to then, flex it in a slightly different context. So the fact that I was able to express maybe a similar emotion of happiness or something like that made it easier for me to flex that muscle looking at a painting later on or something like that. So
I like that.
yeah.
Growing up, I know like your family members were really into music, but that's not always to say that, even if that's the case for someone, they'll be drawn to also doing music themselves. What do you think it was, like maybe your earliest memory or earliest feeling of being like, I want to do it. I don't want to just listen to it. I want to do it. Like, what was it?
I don't think I ever had that thought. I think I had I
never
had the
just
thought.
did it? Okay.
I never had the thought of not doing it, I guess, rather, which was like, I guess like one of the first memories I have, like the way I became a saxophonist is completely arbitrary. Like my cousins that live in the Twin Cities had a saxophone and they didn't like it. So they're like, well, we bought it. Do you guys want it? So I'm like, my mom's just like, sure, whatever, Christian will try it. And that was it. I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I just kind of have like lock me in a room with something and I'll figure it out. I'll play with it and do kind of stuff like that. And it was just kind of that. It could have been.
Did you feel like when you started playing it, like immediately? Did you feel something like immediately?
No.
No.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say in terms of like that I'm expressing myself or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was more so.
But
like
did you feel like? Oh, sorry.
It was engaging my brain.
Okay.
In that certain way, which I really liked. Like I'm really into like RPG games or whatever, where you level something up very slowly. That's what engaged me. I was like, oh my God, I'm a level 1. I don't have any perks.
So do you think that was actually your mentality?
For sure, yeah. Yeah, that's what drove me without
old were you at the
time? It was either like first or third grade, something like that. So what would that be?
So
like
you had been playing video games maybe up until that point?
Yeah.
And so you were
Skyrim, Oblivion, kind of were formative. Or maybe Skyrim wasn't out yet. Maybe Oblivion was.
Okay. But one of those kind of style games where it's like
Baldur's Gate.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Yeah, I kind of
Do you think your brothers are the same?
My oldest brother for sure, because he's the one who introduced me to these video games.
Okay.
He was always. But
with music too, do you think they hit?
Yes, but not to the degree to which I was.
Okay.
At the same time, I think they just didn't have as much. I think it was partially because like I had a lot more alone time probably.
Sure.
And so like it just like really drove that in, where I just like go hang out in my room and just like do one thing or another.
Sure.
And I think they being, especially Andy, who has the most similar like I guess
mindset
way of going about things that I do. He was the first child though, so he was never left alone. So like we have the same mindset. The things that we spent time on though, and like kind of solidifying or strengthening, were different because of of how much we were with people or not.
Sure.
So that's really it.
Huh.
So,
yeah. Do you think there's something there, like maybe going back to neuroscience, genetics, or whatever? Do you think there's something there, that just makes it more likely that you guys would be drawn to music? Because your father was super into music. All of you guys are into music. I don't know how much your mom is into music.
I mean, I think I would say two things. Yes, it's almost certain that there is something. And I would also say that thing is probably so small, it is not even
inconsequential.
Yeah, exactly. Not even worth considering in the context of all of the things that can drive you towards music.
Sure.
Yeah. Because I mean, the genome is just so big, and there's so many, and it's so complex and has so many interactives, and the way it expresses itself is also so complex. I would never say it doesn't affect it.
Well, this is like pulling from very crude anecdotal like fragments of things and that I've like learned, but like how much do you buy into the idea of like epigenetics and like how much epigenetics can literally influence like your offspring? So like if your father was super into music, like to say it crudely, because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to like actually describe it accurately, like all the genes that he has internally that can be influenced in an epigenetic way, while he was doing music and before he had you guys, like he was like flipping them, flipping them to the max and like, flipping all those genes in the right way. And so then when he had you guys, like, and I'm not trying to make the argument that I'm saying like the genetics component is that wasn't my intention of bringing that up, but it's more of just like a curiosity, something I wanted to see what you thought about. Like, I mean, do you think that like epigenetics could have like really also pushed you guys? You know, like that one generation difference between your dad and you guys,
Like in terms of the epigenetics
really
playing
influencing,
into the heritability
really
of it?
influencing. Yeah, yeah.
No,
Okay.
no. From a mechanistic, like from the biological perspective, I at least don't know of any mechanisms
Yeah.
that would make sense at all, really,
Sure.
to be honest. So, yeah, maybe there's something to say, like, there's like histones and how tightly wound it is, but like, you're creating a whole new copy of it, and I just don't believe it would really, really change it at all.
Sure.
I think it's purely
Environmental.
yeah.
Sure.
And like the degree to which it is heritable would actually, I would believe, be in the genome itself. And it would be things like, do we have sensitivity to pitches, like because of the way the ear works?
Sure.
I would think it would be those sort of seemingly mundane, banal features that would be heritable, but in summation can add to a slight, larger inclination to like music or something like that.
Sure.
That's how I believe it would be heritable.
Sure.
Yeah. But you can imagine like how small that would be. Like if like just because you're more sensitive to music, there's also people that like, like what is it, Beethoven or something went deaf, or is it Bach or somebody? I can't remember.
I think
somebody
it's
like
Beethoven.
That.
It's either Beethoven or Mozart.
And he was basically deaf by the end of it, and still, obviously, he had already had so many years behind him, but like still produced some very important works. I think after that point, so it's like that's obviously an extreme case, but I don't think it's just because you hear better makes you more into music.
Yeah.
Because again, it all comes down to expression.
Right.
You can be a very non-expressive person with eagle ears. I don't know. So anyway, that was kind of a long kind of ramble, but
yeah.
I wouldn't trust any more opinions from you. So maybe.
Oh, dude, I love hearing your opinions. Yeah.
Because I guess you didn't really express fully your epigenetic case. Do you believe? Not so much. Or?
I don't know. I don't have probably my favorite philosopher is Socrates, and this isn't exactly his stance, or how it's written about his stance, but it's like I don't want to necessarily say like I have a case. It's more of just like probing, digging.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So kind of seeing other people's definitions and then giving them potential exceptions. Not saying I've done that yet, but where am I going with that? Yeah, I don't really have a case. I just like heard recently somewhere that like epigenetics is actually, it plays a bigger role than like what a lot of like scientists initially thought.
With heritability specifically?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But that's like a one-off probably YouTube clip that I saw that's like, you basically should just put zero stock in it because I don't know any papers or anything behind it. And I can't even remember like if it was like a, reputable source who said it, like an actual neuroscientist versus just, someone. I think it was probably someone in that kind of vein, but yeah.
And the way I could see it happening would be more things like, I mean, we were talking about a very particular case of like music and your interest to that, which is a very high level function of your brain, right? Which, in terms of degrees of abstraction from your genome is about the furthest away you can get from it. But as you get closer, I think there might be more of you could potentially argue more of a case like that.
What do you mean
like,
it's the furthest?
Like you have your genome, the expression of your genome comes through RNAs and then through proteins and all this. Yeah. Then they form cellular structures.
Yeah.
Those structures form networks in your brain. And then those networks in your brain are ultimately maybe what drives your affinity towards music. That's like, I'm sure there's maybe if you want to get more granular, there's a certain level, numbers of layers of abstraction essentially. However, if you were to say like the case between genetics and proteins might be affected from the epigenetics, it might be more tractable, I guess, you know what I mean? To have that. So like things like I can imagine like if your mom had a lot of sodium in her diet, I think that would be directly expressed within like your intracellular matrix. You probably would have a little more sodium and stuff.
Huh.
That's an epigenetic feature.
Sure.
I don't know what that would do to you in terms of like your expression of your genome.
Yeah.
But that would be for, I mean, like, I know, I would almost imagine that would certainly happen, but I don't know how it would affect you.
Well, I thought, I'm going to check my phone here.
Oh, yeah.
Two things with that. Did you take a lot of genetics?
Because
You kind of got almost like a physical chemistry
Yeah,
degree in
I would say-
undergrad,
Yeah.
and then you kind of emphasized more physical chemistry with your master's, and then obviously
Yeah.
biostats with your PhD.
I don't think I
But
ever.
in there,
Yeah.
I don't really glean intuitively like a lot of genetics. But it seems like you've got like a nice, comfortable grasp with it.
Well, I don't think I took a course that was called genetics or anything like that.
Okay,
Ever.
just took a lot.
But I
of
took
like,
biophysics, which
indirect courses that touches on.
yeah,
genetics.
exactly, where we like talked about all the like the nitty gritty of like how translation happens, like to the point where we're like looking at the enzymes and how they get influenced by coenzymes or cofactors or stuff like, oh, that changes the shape, does this. We never really talked about like, I don't really know what you talked about in a genetics class, to be quite honest.
Sure.
But like I talked about the mechanistic details, and that was like my first training at Yale with biophysics and biochemistry, and then at UMD through my physical chemistry. Well, I guess that's the same thing. And then in my PhD now, I've considered it more from the population level genetics. But I think a genetics course properly would probably fit right between those two, and I've never taken that, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they discussed in that, but maybe, knowing both ends, at least I can kind of guess what's in between. I don't
Sure.
know. Yeah.
Something that popped in my mind, changing gears back to like music and stuff. When you were playing the saxophone early on, did it ever cross your mind you're like, actually I'd rather be learning the piano or the drums, or like did any other instrument kind of like speak to you?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I would I would say yeah, I don't know why that is, because I guess you can kind of chalk it up to naivety, just because I was a kid. And obviously, most things were governed by my naiveness. But I thought guitar was cool. That would be the only other thing.
Okay.
So I did pick that up eventually, because like guitar is like what picks up girls.
Yeah.
And that was probably the most thought I gave to that. And then, no, but quite honestly, it was like, and then I picked up the bassoon, which was just because someone told me to. So like at that age, it was really just like someone said, "Hey, you should try this," and I was like, "Yeah, I'll try it." I guess, yeah, I didn't really have thoughts on it at that time.
That's cool. That's cool that you just kind of had that ability. I don't even know if ability is the right word, but you just had that ability to. It's like someone would tell you something or just like give you an idea and you just run with it.
Yeah,
I think that's really cool.
That's really all it was. So someone could have gave me a tambourine, and I might have just played the hell out of a tambourine.
I'm curious though, because like this is gonna sound bad, and this is coming from a place of naiveness or incompetence, but like I feel like knowing you, if someone gave you a tambourine, you would have like been like, you would have like capped out earlier, because like I feel like the complexity of a tambourine does not really get to the same like complexity level as a as a saxophone.
Yeah.
And correct me if you think I'm wrong.
I think that's pretty fair. I think, yeah, that's probably true. I don't know what like, I don't know. Like, I probably would have done tambourine with singing or something, like that, or tambourine with dancing or whatever. Or like the way that most people do like auxiliary percussion. It's like no one's a tambourine player, but they play tambourine, they play xylophone, they play like that. That's probably more, because it's I guess it was a silly case, but it was a totally unrealistic case. Like that wouldn't have happened. But,
yeah, for sure. Let's see, what else can we move into?
I guess we have like gym talk. We have general philosophy ideas.
Yeah, is there anything you specifically are interested in talking about? Because like if you say something, if something just pops in my mind, I kind of just like direct us that way. But
Well, I'm just thinking of the conversations we have when you pop in my office mostly. So,
I still loved it when you brought up, you like knew the context in which a line integral is like used. And I remember just thinking like, God, that's so cool that you could just like, and maybe, that's because you spent some, I shouldn't say spent some. It sounds like you spent a lot of time in the trenches for like real analysis. And it sounds like that's discussed or studied somewhat extensively and through different avenues of like, yeah.
Well, I would say, yeah. First of all, the familiarities, yeah, because I have, I covered it, I suppose, in two, like, courses in undergrad, where it would have been, I think, third semester of calculus, and then for in the real number system, and then complex analysis, they come up a lot. Actually, it's like kind of a foundational feature of it. But yeah, basically, I mean, the only reason I knew it is because I guess I studied it, So
I'm going to ask this question. I don't know if it's even a correct question to ask. Is all of real analysis encompassed in complex analysis? Kind of like how the whole real line is encompassed in the...
I guess there's an argument to be made
imaginary
for that.
I guess, would you even say... so what's the accurate way to say this? All real numbers are contained within...
the complex plane.
The plane, but not the imaginary line.
Yeah, because they run orthogonal to one another. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And I've still been trying to figure out, and I haven't put much effort into it. I was picking ChatGPT's brain about it. I'm still trying to figure out if those are orthogonal to each other. Is there one in the z direction?
Oh, yeah.
And is there... I don't know. I just think that's fascinating to think about.
Well, the thing is, you can create any... Like, the real number line is a set of numbers.
Right.
And the imaginary number line is a set of numbers. And you can create any arbitrary set of numbers. And you can create any arbitrary set of orthogonal numbers to those.
Yeah.
It's just whether it's useful.
Yeah.
And can explain anything.
Right, right.
So for sure there is. It's just...
But I guess to me, it's like with those two, there's a very meaningful relationship.
Yeah.
Or very meaningful relationships between those two orthogonal lines. And is there something that's also very meaningful in the z direction or whatever?
I guess I don't know.
Yeah, no, and
I never studied that.
That's something that still is like there, because it's just like, and it's like, is it like there's almost something waiting to be discovered in like the z direction?
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I'm absolutely
yeah.
Just how far out are we? Like, someone going to think of it next week, or is it?
Yeah.
I don't know, 300 years away.
Right.
Because what was it like? I think a lot of the complex analysis was formulated with for Fourier transforms and frequency domain and that kind of stuff.
Oscillations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that was like only a little bit. I mean, my history on this isn't like very good.
Sure.
But I think that's like maybe in the 1800s.
Yeah. Which is crazy to think about.
Relatively recent in terms of mathematics. So.
I know imaginary numbers. I think they go back to even like the 16th century.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm not actually familiar with that at all.
Yeah. Because there was this YouTube video I watched a while ago, and I don't know if they at the time would have called them that, but they were like onto it in like the 16th century, I believe. Yeah. And I don't know exactly at what time period they were like solidified.
Because they were definitely dealing with polynomials, right?
Yes.
And, like, the number of roots.
Right. Yes.
With a polynomial.
Yes.
Yep. I can't remember exactly.
That sounds right. Yeah. Because they got to a power of 3, like cubed polynomial.
For like an actual closed form solution of the roots to a polynomial.
Yeah,
any polynomial.
And they started to get to higher dimensions, and I think that's where it's like, I could be misremembering.
Higher order polynomials.
Yeah, and I think that's where it was like trending, was like leading them towards the discovery of, they didn't call it imaginary numbers at the beginning, but yeah. There's something I was going to ask you.
And it's kind of funny because like, if you think about like the way we have to explore things, you only can explore the nearest edge of where you exist. And that intersection of a polynomial happens on the imaginary line. That's where the real numbers kind of like meet the complex plane. So it's kind of funny how, I don't know, that exploration has to start. It starts at the intersection of those two lines, which is 0. And then it develops with what's immediately adjacent to 0 in the complex plane. That's not the real numbers, which is the imaginary line. And then we move that imaginary line and fill out the full plane. It's kind of funny how like, it has such a nice analogy to like someone walking around a map. Like we start at 0, figured out the real number line, then we walked left and right, and then we can go anywhere on this 2-dimensional surface. So.
By no means do I feel like I can claim to be a mathematician. I love math, but this is what I think is so fascinating about math. And some people, this gets into like a philosophical argument. Like some people believe like math is just totally a human creation.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when I hear stuff like that, to me it feels more like science in that like we discovered something
Mm-hmm.
about math that was like almost always there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was almost always there that like the imaginary line was always there intersecting with the real line, creating the complex plane. And it is funny because like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, and you've spent more time with like the math realm, especially like abstract math, doing proofs and stuff. I feel like people even use the words like this person made a discovery.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, there implies you discovered something as in like it was always there,
Mm-hmm.
but now we finally discovered it.
Mm-hmm.
We finally saw it, its existence. We finally realized it exists, and even though, like before that, it feels like it implies that it was always existing, but we just didn't know it yet. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say,
I think we kind of talked about this in the past, but
like I wouldn't say, I think I see where you're coming from. Where it's like someone existed like in a very like I don't know crude sense. You could say someone existed the certain ordering of these symbols that means something, right? And it's like I don't know, that seems kind of like a weird statement. I think rather when you say a discovery, you're discovering an explanation for some phenomenon in mathematics, and I think that in that sense, it's totally discovery. In the sense that you're kind of exploring the ordering of these symbols, the ordering of these ideas to make some sort of structured argument, I don't know, to answer a question. So I do think discovery is a very fine sense to say it. It's just the exploration is much more random, I would say, than like what we think about like discoveries happening in the like physical universe. Rather, it's like in the symbolic space. Because I think a computer could discover, and this is like, there's some sort of like information theory or something. I don't really understand that well in mathematics, where it's like you can analyze a proof or a statement for its truthiness based on like assigning numbers to words and all that. And a computer can make a discovery because it can just stumble upon. And I think that's fine to say it's a discovery because there was 100 other non-discoveries before they found that. I don't know. So I do think exploration and discovery are the right, make a lot of sense in terms of like mathematics and the way the research works. So
sure.
Yeah.
Do you think like when you've done all your proofs in math, have they always been handwritten or typed out?
I actually usually type mine out.
So, but you don't use code. You don't code at all, like.
Not for proofs, no.
Do they code for proofs?
There are, like in the same vein, I've seen people like computational mathematicians or something like that, where they do structure it like that, so that they can. This is really well outside my expertise, but basically, I think they boil it down to these numbers, and then they kind of can order the statements until they find something that makes sense.
Huh.
You need to do that from a programmatic sense. No person would ever want to do that. It'd be so boring.
Sure.
And so inefficient, time inefficient.
Okay. But like in your real analysis course, it was never like expected.
Proof, never.
No.
Never.
Do you see it trending that way?
I
don't have any.
Well, so like, no.
Okay.
No.
Part of the reason why I ask is I remember seeing this YouTube clip a long time ago where it was like, and maybe I already brought this up to you, but like how quantum computing could lead to like proving certain things in math where we're just limited by, I guess, the human computational brain power. I don't know if that's the right way to talk about it, but like, and it also just goes back to my huge fascination and excitement for things like quantum computing, where like what advancements is going to come from it, in everything, math, science, technology, whatever. And I thought I remember them saying how like they think that quantum computing can really potentially change the game for math. I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, if you have like a sense for that, because I mean, if it sounds like a lot of proofs are already done just by hand and by the human kind of brain capacity. So it sounds like computer doesn't really come into the play
Yeah,
for
it's much too
for
creative.
a healthy amount of proofs that are
It's
done.
definitely, yeah, it's way too creative a process, you know. But I would say,
Which is cool,
what
right?
helps
Like,
out with what, like, in the other vein, I think where computers fit in is that they can help you do a proof, but they cannot do it fully. Like, for instance, like they could analyze your statement and just say like, and I don't know if these programs exist because I don't do enough proofs to like seek out some sort of assistance. But like in the same way you have Grammarly to say like, oh, you I don't know, use the wrong form of a verb. You could have a easily like program a software that says like you used a for all statement, so you need to follow that with this sort of approach to the proof. Not you only proved that there exists something, not that for all of a number in a set, you know, something like
yeah.
that. And I think there's a lot of room for computer aided proofreading in that.
Or even like the marriage between quantum computing and AI. I think we've talked
This I
about
haven't. No,
this.
yeah,
Yeah, and
Very,
I know we've
almost
talked about
nothing.
this just a little bit at least, but like, yeah, how you could start to leverage that in the direction of potentially, you know, yeah. I mean, I think there's a level of sadness where it's like I just think we've talked about the millennium problems with math, how like Riemann's hypothesis is one of like the grand ones because it like underpins a lot of things, and a lot of things in science and math really hold on to it being true, but no one's actually proved it yet. So I think I don't know. It would be kind of sad if like on some level if a human didn't do it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. And maybe that's because it feels like it'd be ushering in like the age of like humans no longer being, you know, the us who discover and make breakthroughs. You know, it's like starting to then turn towards. But at the same time, like, you know, I mean, I don't know how much for abstract math, but like in science, like a lot of breakthroughs are coming through technology and computing. So at the same time, it's like it would be interesting if like at a Nobel Prize, if they listed the people and they're like, and also thanks to, you know, Windows, blah, blah.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah. I don't see that happen, or at least in my understanding, not quite there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than the obvious ways in which like ChatGPT can help you do like, you know, lit reviews. I don't think it's not solving proofs for sure. So, I mean, well, I guess I think there are actually AI tools that do proofs, but I'm not sure if they like are novel.
Sure.
Or if it's like a more of a proofs like lookup sort of situation.
Sure.
So yeah.
I'm gonna check my phone.
Yeah.
Ugh.
You heading out today? What are you up to?
Not necessarily. Emily, she's gonna be leaving relatively soon, and it's 12:14 now, so I don't know how much time you've got left.
I'm like it was a soft, so I'm still feeling it pretty all right. So,
okay. Yeah. Actually, I'll just text Emily and see.
Take a little pause.
Yeah, how much time she's. Do you want some more coffee?
No. I'm good. I've been sipping it and I'm already buzzing pretty good. So
from the caffeine.
Yeah, it really hits me hard. I gotta be careful how I dose it.
Sure. Yeah, I throughout most of college I didn't drink coffee. And I remember I was taking this advanced organic chemistry course, and I'd only slept like 5 hours. And I remember like for some reason coffee just sounded so good that morning. And I remember like I grabbed a cup and I went to the lab associated with that course. And I remember, like, have you ever seen the show or the movie, what's it called, Limitless?
Yeah.
With Bradley Cooper and that drug. That's how it felt to me. That's how I pictured. I couldn't, it was like unbelievable how like dialed in I felt like I was. And I could just absorb every single aspect of all the things that he was teaching. Ironically, I can't really remember what he was teaching that day. So it was probably just totally like in my head thinking like, oh, wow, you know.
Actually, there is like a funny phenomenon. I remember when I was taking like freshman psychology, where there was like a study that people going on like a blind date or something like that, and if you offer them caffeine before, they will perceive themselves as liking each other more before. And so I think it's like this like, and they have to not anticipate that. Like you have to tell them that they're having decaf and have caffeine so that they aren't like their brain and their expectations aren't calibrated to what they're going to experience. So if they experience something that's slightly above what they anticipated, they'll wrongfully attribute it to like some sort of connection. So I wonder if it's a similar setting where it's like you didn't have any expectation of what coffee would do to you.
Yeah.
So you had it, still didn't heighten your expectation to what you'd think, and like just like not even like your retention, but like how you felt, and so you felt tingly or like awake and alive, and your body might have just interpreted it as like, man, I'm soaking this.
Yeah.
So good. But you might have actually not even seen it. That'd be kind of interesting to consider.
Yeah. Yeah, because I can't even remember what he was talking about that day. All I just remember is feeling like that. And then I kind of never turned back. Like I just kept drinking coffee and fell in love with it. Especially, I don't know. I know you're not big into coffee, but like I started going to Duluth Coffee Company, and like I remember trying their coffee and just being blown away by how, at least like to my naive experience with coffee, how good it tasted. And I know it's very high quality coffee. So, but yeah, I mean, at the time I just, it was amazing.
Was that a paid advertisement? Or?
No. It is.
I was gonna say, when do we go to the ad break?
Right. Well, you know what's interesting? I don't know if you've ever talked. Well, I know since you don't really drink coffee, you probably don't ever go there, so you probably don't really interact with the owner much. But the owner, he said something really fascinating to me one day. He said something like, "Coffee is the last agricultural product that will like tie humanity." Will keep humanity tied to the land or something.
Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, yeah.
And I'm not expecting it, huh?
Do you know what he meant by that? And that like
he just felt. I think he was just saying that like out of all the other agriculture products, it's become so much more industrialized, and somehow we've lost the aspect of like being able to really feel. I think connected to the land, like humans connected to the land that they're working with.
Yeah,
I think that's what he meant.
I guess I could see it like where coffee has to grow in like the mountains.
Yeah, I know it's
a
higher altitude.
So it doesn't lend itself to like scaling well.
Yeah.
Maybe? And so it's like down and dirty practices.
And so like he specifically like paid advertisement. He's a part of this wave of coffee where like he is very, very, very deliberate about going to the farms themselves, meeting the farmers, building relationships with the farmers. And so I think from the paradigm in which he approaches like coffee, that agriculture product is extremely like relationship focused, human focused, and just kind of in a purity sense, like, that person working with the land and relationships.
Yeah.
Where you get big industrial farming for like corn and meat and stuff in it. Yeah. So and it's funny because like I've asked him twice, like, well, first time he just said it. The second time I asked him to restate it so I could try to wrap my head around it better. And I think that's what he was trying to go with. But next time I see him, I want to try to ask him again because I just thought it was extremely profound.
Is it like in a pragmatic sense? Because that's where my mind went. I'm like, coffee's easy to ship because it's lightweight and dry. So it's like, it doesn't need to be scaled to the same level as beef, which like in order to make it cost effective, you need to ship it across the country. It needs to be huge.
Right.
And then the other thing is like, you can't drive a tractor on a mountain. That also seems like a viable reason.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they have like tools like that, but it's just so cost prohibitive, especially for farmers in like Mexico or Peru or whatever, where it's like, they're already getting underpaid for what it is. And how do we get on that?
I don't know.
What was the segue there?
You were talking about organic chemistry.
Oh yeah, and coffee, and then
Get nice and high before your lab. Off a good cup of Joe.
Would you consider being high?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
It quite literally heightens your sense of what you're doing. Like you said, it's almost exactly.
But did it though? Because like I said, I don't even really remember.
From what it sounds like, it's a pretty memorable
It made
experience.
me feel like I was really dialed in, but like
that's what I'm saying. You felt it. That's all.
Yeah. I guess when you say,
I'm not saying it didn't improve your ability. I'm just saying you felt different.
Yeah. It's funny too. I remember like my friends, in college, they would be like, "Oh, I gotta get a cup of coffee,"
Hmm.
and I never really understood it. And I'm like, "Why? Like, what's the like?"
Hmm.
And so I could empathize better after I had that. Um,
You're hooked.
and I just
It's a
love
gateway drug, really.
well, and I love the taste. I just love the taste too, and that's partly also why I brought up Duluth Coffee Company is like
They're the
there's
best coffee company in Duluth and the greater Great Lakes area.
it was more of just like the experience. I don't know if you have anything like that where it's like, I know you said you're big into tea. So if like you get like a really, I mean, what you perceive to be a really high
Mhm.
quality tea and it like provides not just this level of like a routine, but also like the experience.
Uh, sorry, what was the question with that?
Just more of like
Or-
how like what you like in theory, the higher the quality of tea,
Mhm.
the greater the experience is for drinking it.
No,
And-
I wouldn't
okay.
say that. No.
Okay. That's how
Yeah.
I perceive coffee for me is like
Yeah, I kind of have almost an immediate aversion when you say something like that because
okay.
there's so many people that just because it commodifies experience, and I just don't think that's really. I mean, it might be true, and I'm not trying to say it's all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe coffee, it is like that's. It does maybe
Yeah, I
make a
see what you're
difference,
saying.
but like I'm sure there's also very expensive coffee brands that suck at the
Yeah.
same time, and then. I just always am very scared of commodifying quality experience. I just
Sure.
so that's why I say like immediately say that. Not necessarily for coffee, but
Yeah.
in the generality of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I feel like that's hard to avoid though. Like I think
Uh,
it's really hard to avoid not commodifying experience.
I think well, in some sense, yeah, but to the point that you need to like in to the point that it's like a monotonically increasing function or whatever as you spend more money, you get better experience. I think that's avoidable. But commodification of experience, yeah, is probably unavoidable to some sense. But I don't think it always needs to be the case that you spend more money. To
Yeah.
get better
Yeah.
experience.
Okay. I
Like
see what
I'm
you're
saying, like I bike to work now instead of drive. So much cheaper. but
Yeah.
way more fun.
Right.
That's kind of like I'm kind of broadening it to like make sense of that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
It's not like, oh no, actually, if I would buy a Mercedes, it'd be way more fun. Or after that, if I bought a Lamborghini, God, commuting to work would be so fun. And then like this, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think that's always true.
Hold on. Let's hold on an idea. Let's define what monotonically means.
One, I guess, tonic like version. Monotonic meaning monotonically increasing, meaning it's increasing and it's only increasing. It's only ever increasing. You know what I mean?
So
It doesn't
someone
go
said
like
diatonically,
down. Well, I don't know what the opposite monotonic versus like,
or if you just increase, instead of-
stereotonic. I guess
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Multitonic or whatever.
Is that more of a statistics term?
Uh,
Because maybe it's a math
It's used
term.
a lot. It's used a lot in statistics.
Is it okay?
But from mathematical, in like mathematical statistics from maths. Trying to think. I mean, it usually has to do with maximizing functions when you can assume where the max is or something like that. Actually, it's maybe it's. I mean, it's definitely from math primarily. It's probably more used in statistics though.
okay.
Yeah.
Because it sounded vaguely familiar, but I wasn't. I mean, I got the essence of what you're saying, but
Yeah,
I
I'm
wanted,
trying to think like
I
in your
wanted the
undergrad courses in
I
math.
wanted the details.
I don't know if it would necessarily come up explicitly
I'm sure
to talk about it. It's more something we need to consider in proofs. So like when you're doing, because in the first couple of semesters of calculus, you're computing stuff, so you can see the function and you can see it's going up and then down or something, like that. But like when you're proving conditions, you might, in an abstract sense, you need to consider all functions. So you need to it's hard to keep track of, oh, did this function go up and then down? So you need to have this like vocabulary for it's necessary for your proof,
Sure.
essentially.
Okay. Got it.
So it might not have come up until you have more of a proof based.
Sure.
You might have implicitly talked about it, but it'd be on a graph, it'd be so obvious. Your teacher wouldn't even say it, because you have eyes and you can see it's going up.
Yeah.
It's only something when you're not you don't have a graph to look at.
Sure.
To talk about it.
Sure. That makes sense. Hold on that. Because I want to bring up the Lamborghini Ferrari thing.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not saying I disagree. I just want to throw devil's advocate at you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've never driven in a Lamborghini or a Mercedes. Well, have you driven in a Mercedes?
Probably. I don't know. I
Okay.
think so. Yeah. I think
Okay.
minivans.
Okay.
I don't think I ever drove them myself. No. But
Okay.
yeah.
Well, what about that idea? Where it's like you're kind of saying this without any experience. So how come?
Uh,
Do you believe you can truly know without experiencing it?
yeah, for sure. Or I can.
Why?
I can approximate what I think it'd be like.
Okay.
I think it'd be fun to move fast. Uh, it would, but it would only be like a little bit of fun,
Sure.
maybe for the first 10 minutes, and then it would probably quickly lose its novelty.
Sure.
Because I have many other experiences that parallel it quite easily, and yeah, I guess it's an informed opinion, but not by I guess derived from real world directly within that case.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And I've never been, because it's kind of rooted under, well, and it's kind of that it goes against my being in some sense, which maybe I put too much and I should reconsider and drive a Mercedes and then it would change my life. But from the absurdity of that, like you can say it, it's like probably unlikely.
Yeah.
So I think I feel pretty confident saying that. That's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. I don't know. Because I know there's like car enthusiasts out there,
Mhm.
who might disagree with you.
And they like big noises and all this. And I'm could not be more turned off by that.
Big noises?
Yeah, cars make big noises. And
But
bigger
big
noises
noises-
makes a cool car.
Big noises in general, or just
I
from
think
cars?
big car noises
Okay.
are important. And I think they're differentiated from like dropping a cymbal on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't think
Because I was
that's
gonna say
cool.
music. I've noticed too when I've gone to concerts, like sometimes it's just so loud.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Because my best friend is a car guy, and
Okay.
he probably could disagree with me. He drives a sports car, Brendan.
Oh really?
Yeah.
What does he drive?
I don't know.
Okay.
He tells me and I forget
Okay.
because it's
just
either a
so
Charger
little
or a
importance.
Challenger or something like that. And he's told me so many times it's kind of embarrassing. I don't know, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And we've driven fast and we made big noises with it. So I guess I'm like, that's kind of where my information comes from.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important for people to be able to engage with art. I think for everyone, because I think it kind of shows a strength in like your spirit, in some sense, like a knowledge of what's going on, your inner workings essentially, and your
Interesting.
ability to empathize with others.
Huh.
So
Interesting. Interesting you'd say that. I think about artists who were not empathetic and who were very self-centered and very much maybe also like struggle mentally.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Like
But probably
Van
for
Gogh.
all those examples, I'm sure there's a million that aren't. But to engage with those, like if you think of every local artist ever, they're generally the most hospitable, friendly, kind of people. That's my first image of an artist.
Sure.
My second would be then very influential ones. But I think they go crazy because no one can understand them as well. I
Yeah.
think that's part of it, where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm saying all this stuff, I'm putting this stuff out there, and no one's quite kind of, whatever they need to show that someone understands it. They're not receiving that.
So that's kind of the interesting thing, going back to what you originally said about art, where the expression is there, but kind of what you're saying, there's almost like certain people who are reliant on feeling like they need people to receive it, and I don't think that's always the case.
Yeah, it depends how much
for artists.
your being is tied to being an artist.
Yeah.
I think it's just a function of that. So like a professional artist, it's probably very well tied to their sense of being.
Yeah.
And so if they don't feel like they can, it's received, I could see that being a pretty big like psychological dissonance. It's
And
like
commodification is one of on the surface, the greatest feedback loops for positivity and saying you're being received.
Yeah, if people copy and paste it and put it everywhere.
Yeah.
But I mean, not always though, because there is like the idea of the pure, like the very pure artists, where they're like, I don't want you to have this unless you understand it, because there is also that person. So like, it also is up to that artist to kind of like how
Do you
they
think that's very
internalize
much the
feedback.
exception though?
Yeah, I'd probably say that's the exception.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I only say that just because like we need money to survive,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think it would be difficult to find someone who, you know, unless they already had like another source of income or whatever, multiple sources of income. And I think that's the intersection where like creating art can be really interesting because maybe you don't feel limited by
Mm-hmm.
having to need that to be your source of survival.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, then like if you're solely, I think it's one of the most courageous things to choose art to be your source of income. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what people go, that's why people are going into art and that's how they think of it, is like
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be my income. I think it's more of like I want to do this so badly and nothing else. And I'm going to try to commodify it and hopefully I can make a living,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not necessarily the intention to like scale it and be like extremely wealthy off of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like that's, I think on some level they feel like that's the only way they can live. That is their being,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to find a means to get paid and live and
Mm-hmm.
eat. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's like, yeah, I don't know. I think that's also something that's so courageous about people who choose like art solely. You know.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'd say it's courageous. But,
Sure.
Because I don't want to like say that as a downplay. I think it's also a testament of like the purity of their thought and how much they value purity. Like, because art is like you don't have a boss, all this, you know. And I think,
Except the customer is kind of your boss.
well, yeah, but is it courage? I don't know if that's courageous.
Sure.
Rather than I would say either stubborn in the bad sense. I can't think of like a positive way to say it.
Sure.
But also there's a positive sense to it. I just can't think of the word to say it.
Why don't you
Stubborn.
think it's courageous? So then it's like, what is courageous? What is courage?
Well, like in order to be courageous, I think you have to make a decision. And like you could imagine my case where like I was shoved a saxophone, and had I just become a musician, I don't think that would have been courageous at all. I think it would have just been a matter of circumstance, and that I didn't like consider any other options, even though they exist. But you know, to a young mind, I could have already been so down that track before I even considered another option that it was just not even feasible. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and I wouldn't consider the case if I had become a saxophonist, purely because I was handed a saxophone in third grade, being courageous. Even though like that decision to make that choice, I wouldn't call that courageous. But you know, going on a stage, still courageous. Still choosing to come back after getting booed off stage, that would be courageous, you know, something like that. But I don't think like that life choice at all would be considered courageous in that case.
Maybe I'm just having a smooth brain moment, but I guess I'm still having trouble kind of understanding what you're saying and how it's not courageous. Just because, like, are you saying that you think a lot of artists, I don't know if you'd say a lot, but artists are choosing art but didn't really dabble in other areas? So it's like, are you saying they need to experience other career paths, and then after experiencing these career paths, some n amount of career paths, then if they chose art, that's courageous to you?
Yeah.
Why?
But I'm not downplaying it. So I think you're kind of also having a hard struggling with like a person that is just an artist from day one, never considers anything else, and makes great art. I think that's terrific, and I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I just don't think they have to be called courageous
Sure.
for doing it. That's all. I think they can still make courageous pieces, but I don't think them being an artist is courageous. You know what I'm saying? Differentiating like that whole, like the direction they chose from each individual work. That's all I'm trying to say.
So like, if someone worked,
like I could say this about a soldier too. If you're just like a guy who's like basically forced in the military because, I mean, that kind of happens, like your family did it, all whatever, you've never given another thought. I don't think that's courageous to like join the army and stuff. But they could have still done courageous stuff while they're serving. It may be an active duty or something like that. That's all I'm trying to say. Because, you know, if you don't make a choice, why would it be courageous at all? I would never consider it that.
Interesting. So, yeah. So you would categorize it sometimes as people don't even make the conscious choice in their mind to
do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that.
Why?
I would say, hugely. We're social. And
why do you think that?
We're social creatures. I think we're very suggestible. You know, if enough of your friends say, this is cool, you probably are going to start thinking this is cool, like this vase. Everyone tells you it's cool. And maybe eventually you're like, oh, yeah, I thought it was stupid at first, but now it's cool. Think about like your Rothko. Like enough people told you to look at it. You at least considered it to try and make it cool in your brain. I think that's one mechanism. I had another one in mind, but I can't quite think of what I was thinking. I'm buzzing too much on coffee.
Sorry.
It's my own fault. I got to figure out how to dose it. But
so like if someone, so how long does someone need to be in a different career, and how much experience do they need to have? And then if they turn to art, do they become courageous?
Long enough. That's all.
But what's long enough?
To have experiences to consider, to weigh against it. I don't know.
Oh.
You could have a life-changing experience as soon as you do. If you're an artist and then you go into the police field, you might have a life-changing experience in like the first month. And then you make a decision off of that. That would be courageous. You can make the argument that you can make a courageous decision then. But I don't think you need to like go out of your way to make courageous decisions.
Yeah.
It seems cool because it implies some sort of independence from like your circumstances because you're kind of doing something that's hard. But I think courage is much more rare than a lot of people chalk it up for, or at least like let me think how to say that. Like a lifetime of courage is very, very hard and very rare. Individual acts of courage are still rare, but less
so what's a
so.
lifetime of courageousness?
I don't exactly know, but like maybe I think of like resistance people. I guess I don't think of it as in a profession as much. I just don't put much worth into that. So for someone who puts a lot of worth into professions and stuff, they might come up with this argument, but I think of more like rebels for a certain cause or something like that continue and fight that because they've lived maybe in poverty for a long time, didn't like that so much. Then they're like, let's fight that, even though with the threat of violence. They've lived in poverty, and I think an uncourageous thing to do, like one of many uncourageous, and there's many courageous decisions. One of many could be, let's just keep on doing it and not cause a ruckus. A courageous decision could be to oppose that. So, and do it for your whole life with many, many acts of courageous. I think it's the summation of those small courageous acts too that would then lead to the evaluation of a courageous life too. So, yeah.
So what about, I'll frame it this way, and maybe you'll still have the same viewpoint. I would say out of majority of career professions, to be an artist is something that has like an extremely low likelihood of making you money and consistent, reliable income. And so in some regards, would you view it as like somewhat an adversity because your likelihood of having a reliable, consistent income for the next 10, 20 years is pretty low? Or do you think?
I mean, it's just, there's so many factors to it, right?
Sure.
You have to, how does that person perceive money? Or how they value it, you know what I mean? How well can that person interpret probability? If they think 1% is a huge, very good chance, then again, I don't think that's courageous. People can have warped perceptions of everything. And just because you have been, like, I don't know, doped into thinking a 1% chance into becoming as famous as Bob Dylan is a humongous chance and it's worth it. Going to be trying to be as famous as Bob Dylan, I don't think that's courageous if you're really in that mind state, like in more or less like a delirium or something that you think it's a very good chance. I don't think that's courageous at all. It's like those, like if you're born to do this or something like that, I think that's awesome. I don't think it's fair to call it courageous. That's kind of like the differentiating feature, I suppose. Like you have to have a fear in order to make a courageous decision, right? You can, because what, like, isn't there that like famous statement?
Fear is necessary for courage.
Yeah. What is that statement? It's like, what is it? Courage without fear is restlessness or something.
Oh, okay.
Or no. Is that right? Courage without fear. I don't know. There's something about that. Like courage needs fear and it needs wisdom. You need fear and you need wisdom to make a decision off that to be courageous.
Interesting.
I think if you're lacking in either of those, I don't think it's fair to call it a courageous decision. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. But I know there's a quote that says that in a much better way, and I just can't think of it right now. But
okay.
Yeah.
Hold on to that for 1 sec. I'm just gonna check my phone. Um, maybe in like the next 20 minutes we should wrap this up because I think we've been
Yeah.
going for almost like.
Actually, yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, we probably should.
Okay,
Yeah, I
okay.
didn't even think of that. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Um,
But then it's kind of weird because then you think about like if someone's pointing a gun at you, is your next act going to be courageous?
yeah.
And I think you could make, and like the thing is, it doesn't. If you say what is a courageous act when someone's pointing a gun at you, I think there's such a multiplicity. Again, like how do you value your life? What is your chance of getting shot? Do you interpret that chance as well? You know what I mean? So it's like it's kind of interesting to think about that. So,
Sure.
yeah.
So you feel like you absolutely have to have wisdom and fear
Mm-hmm.
in order for something to be courageous.
Because it needs to be intentional.
Sure.
You know, like
You can never have unintentional courage.
no,
Interesting.
yeah. At least in my perspective,
Sure.
I think because courage is something to be. It's like maybe a virtue. You could probably argue that's a virtue. And
Fear is a little bit more understandable intuitively. How would you define wisdom?
it would be the culmination of what I said, that you're interpreting your situation correctly, more or less, and
Huh.
your outcomes, you're weighing them appropriately.
Okay.
That's kind of it. Like that's kind of, I guess, what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. Huh. I think about my mind goes to like and this is like low hanging fruit, but like soldiers, in a battlefield or something.
No, I think it's a very easy example. I think
It is.
And
It's
exploring
very
it through this
low-hanging
avenue
fruit.
is good. Yeah.
But I would say like in a lot of those situations, I wouldn't intuitively say like soldiers who do courageous acts or what I would perceive courageous like have wisdom, because I think sometimes
with respect to what?
to the whatever act they did, like saving someone,
Mhm.
like it might be their first time doing that.
But they probably, seen more movies. They're certainly not uninformed of what could happen.
I don't know, because like I just think then about like soldiers who like are for like World War II, like people who had very little military experience or combat experience.
And running into some crazy thing.
Yeah,
And
then,
I
like-
wouldn't say that's courageous. I'll totally agree with you. Yeah.
Interesting.
It can be.
Well, I'm not
foolhardy.
saying
Yeah.
I don't think it's courageous. My mind goes to it being courageous.
Yeah.
But I'm more of just kind of like digesting how your viewpoint on courage.
Yeah, how that is a very good case where, that's very easy to see the difference in what you would call and what I would call. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect example.
Yeah, I think courage is a really interesting thing to ponder.
Yeah, because I guess like maybe there should be a second word for it, like because
bravery.
that case is like bravery
is like pretty close. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
exactly how you can parse the difference, but
yeah. So maybe like we could use one for like just overcoming fear.
like bravery almost
Could be
like
courage or
to me
bravery.
seems like an emotional state, like you're feeling brave.
Yeah.
Whereas like courage is like a way to describe, like you were saying, like an action or a life experience or even someone's life.
Yeah. Like bravery can be like I don't know. Bravery to me seems more of like you just feel bulletproof in the moment, and like it might be uninformed completely from wisdom.
Yeah.
And so that kind of that's the way I guess I parse it. I don't know if that's like at all in line with what other people do, but just to like, I think it's important to keep a distinction, and I just don't know if I'm ascribing it to the right words or something like that.
Yeah. Huh. I'll end with this question. And what do you think it is about, and maybe we've talked about this already, but what do you think it is about these kind of like really well-known philosophers who, make strides or breakthroughs or whatever in whatever field of philosophy they're dealing with? Like Descartes comes to mind. But also like some of them are really, really strong mathematicians, like seminal mathematicians like Descartes. What do you think is there?
Well, first of all, the access to an education. I think if Descartes lived in a very poor area, in a remote village, he would not exist, basically, in our minds right now. So I think that's probably the most important thing. Everything else comes, but then you're probably more so you're trying to get at, like, is there some sort of reason people would think about this thing?
Is there a similarity, or like maybe is there an explanation?
I think logic. Yeah, like if you first of all, like and understand logic, you can kind of come to see the two in a similar way. And like this idea of proving things exists and making arguments. I think that's an underlying feature. Staying well organized, at least like in your ideas.
Yeah.
Creating discrete ideas and connecting them rather than having very nebulous impressions of things. Rather dissecting them and understanding parts and then putting them back together and stuff like that. I think it attracts. Or basically, if you have that skill set, you kind of are going to be tend to do good at both.
Yeah.
So I see just basically, yeah, you exercise a similar set of muscles in the two.
Sure. Yeah, and also I think the privilege or being lucky / fortunate enough to have like the ability to write down what it is and then have it promulgated to. Because I had a retired philosophy professor in my previous episode, and I was thinking about all the people that didn't make the cut of like making it through the the historical years of being in canon of philosophy or whatever, but maybe should have. But just because they missed out on the fact of like their works just didn't get published enough, or like yeah, I don't know. That also comes to mind too.
Yeah, I mean that seems like a totally different kind of topic, I suppose, but and maybe more of an arbitrary one.
Sure.
Because I think sometimes the people that make like you can stumble upon a discovery too, or you can have the smartest person ever. And the most prolific publisher ever, just never stumble upon the thing that's going to be revolutionary too. So I don't know. Yeah, much more to say about it than that, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. Other than probability, if you publish more and you're smarter, higher chance. But it's still probabilistic, I think, in that sense.
Sure. Well, I just think about like I think is it the Library of Alexandria? There's like that big famous fire or whatever.
Yeah.
Where like a lot of stuff was lost. So I mean, like, I wouldn't necessarily call that arbitrary. Like,
oh, totally is. Yeah. If like you were the smartest person ever, but your book got burned, so you're forgotten.
Oh.
It seems arbitrary in that sense.
Yeah, in that sense. But I mean, like, well, yeah, I don't know, like, yeah. I'm just trying to think about it in a way that's like I can explain it. I don't know. I mean, so you think it is totally arbitrary that their stuff just keeps getting published and published?
No, I guess I don't know.
So what did you mean by arbitrary then in that context?
Like a single act of discovery, like whether it's important or not, is sort of the arbitrariness.
Yeah.
You can increase your probability of finding one if like you're really smart, or if you're a really hard worker and publish a lot.
Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Like, so there is like 1% of arbitrariness to every revolutionary mathematician. Like, so they're like for everyone that's like Isaac Newton, who was probably, I think he was quite smart, inarguably. There might be another mathematician feasibly, maybe not as influential, but like in a smaller sense, that like wasn't that smart. But, kind of lucky they were in that field at that time.
Yeah.
Thinking about it in a certain way, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and there's cases too, like before Albert Einstein, like maybe even before he was born, like people were already starting to talk about the same ideas. But, like I can't remember his name, but there was one mathematician who like, he was stumbling. He was thinking about the same ideas, but just didn't put pen to paper enough and like see it all the way through, and thus was never the person who discovered relativity.
Yeah. But he could have been the biggest name in science.
Yeah.
Had he, yeah.
And I remember reading too, he like died from exhaustion. He was like a math professor.
Interesting. Okay.
But I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, well, that died.
Okay.
So we can call it there.
I guess that calls it. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways,
that's fun, man. That's cool. Yeah.
Thank you.